Hey, you summoned a lesser maker. Today we're getting back into the Mordheim Catacombs. If you're new to this project, I'm building a Mordheim board inside of a steamer trunk. And this build in particular was inspired by a thrift store find. More about that later. First, I gotta remove some things that aren't being used in this new plan. I initially just kind of threw some things in here that I thought I might be able to work with, but it's just going to be so much easier if I can start from scratch. I've been really inspired by the artist Giovanni Battista, his architectural sketches. This sketch in particular has this giant stairway that just kind of captured my imagination, and I thought the opposing stairwells would be a really interesting choke point. So I was sketching out this idea. I thought it would be really cool to have a giant statue behind the staircase, kind of as a monument, and I found the perfect thing at this thrift store. It's one of the wise men from a nativity scene in it, and that's going to act as the backbone of this project. Another really cool detail was inspired by Bloodborne. I feel like the parallels between Mordheim and Bloodborne are really similar. So I have a concept art book and I've been watching a ton of playthroughs. This specific tile pattern is something that I wanted to try and replicate it. There are also a lot of monuments and statues that I think will call back to this. When building something, having that image in your head is 90% of the battle. So hopefully knowing where I get my references helps you find your own. I'm going to start with the foundation. I'm gonna use XPS foam. I staggered some sheets. I used a miniature to figure out the scale of this step. I was chatting with my friend Jesse Blueflower on Instagram. We were having this debate of like how big a step is. I just kind of decided giant steps are the way to go. I can add a bit more division with some of the tiles. Once I got this into place, I realized that to take off a layer so that there was enough space for the statue behind the stairs. And something you're probably noticing is that I'm not using a Proxxon cutter. I'm using a handheld hot wire cutter because it's a fifth of the price. I just want to show you guys that you could still do this. Because I'm going to be tiling over this doesn't have to be very precise, and allowing imperfections will kind of serve me in the end because it'll make it an uneven surface, and I plan on covering the front facade with cobblestone anyway. In Mordheim, nothing is perfect, so if I ruin it, I succeeded. When I want a straight cut with the hot wire cutter, I use the edge of the table as a straight edge, and I do try to keep the wire at a 90-degree angle. That gives me a pretty good cut. If you're ever curious on something that you just must have for terrain building, especially board making, I cannot recommend insulation gap filler enough. This is an expanding foam that comes in a can. It's basically like a quick dry glue. It fills gaps. You can terraform with it. It cuts with the hot wire cutter, and obviously you should wear a mask with that, but this is a must-have. So the Fallout show started this week, so I brought the build out to the living room and I started making the tiles. I cut out some thin strips of the XPS foam using the edge of the table, and I just started cutting them into squares so that I could glue them in onto the board. When stacking the tiles on the stairs, I put the first layer of tiles on the edge of the stair, and then I did a second layer on top of that, touching the back of the step. That allowed some overhang of the tile above it and kind of made the stairs look like they weren't so big. And I'm doing this to emulate the Bloodborne reference that I had before, and I think you'll see it when it's painted, but it really sells the tile look. They're uneven because I cut them by hand. Some of the tiles stick up in weird places, and it really looks like the ground has kind of settled. The next step was to integrate the statue. Now, I just decided that I would saw off the back of it because that wouldn't be seen anyway, and that was a lot more work than I anticipated. It took probably an hour to cut the back of this thing off, but it was well worth it. And then I just glued it in place with that expanding foam. If this doesn't tell you you should go out and get this material, I don't know what does, because this is resin sticking to a plywood box, sticking to foam, and it's not going anywhere. I've picked it up, the case, and it doesn't shift at all, and it's really great. So go get that expanding foam. It's awesome. So the expanding foam expanded unevenly, making the statue a little crooked, so I just tore it up a little bit, and then I used some excess XPS foam to kind of prop up the statue while it was expanding and drying, and that fixed the issue pretty quickly. Last week, I made a silicone mold start to finish from concept sketch to casting last week, and so I'm finally getting to use those right here. And man, this saves so much time. I was able to put all these cobblestones in a matter of like minutes rather than maybe like 3 hours, and it was really great. So if you're ever curious on how to make your own molds, I made all the mistakes for you in that previous video. You can check it out. After that, to kind of fill in the gaps, I used a texture paste that I just mixed up, and I did it a little too heavy-handed. I covered up a lot of the cobblestones that I worked so hard on casting and stuff, but all the gaps were filled, and it kind of adds its own texture, I guess. But in the future, I would go back with a wet brush and make sure I wipe off all those plaster bits, because they don't come off as easily as I expected after it's all dried. To kind of frame this whole thing off, I made a facade kind of mirroring what was on the other side, like a really sharp point, and that's basically everything for this build. I'd just like to say thank you so much for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe. The channel's been growing a lot lately, and I really appreciate that, and that's thanks to you guys commenting, because that shares this video with new viewers and lets YouTube know that you guys are liking it. I recently got monetized on YouTube, so you like this video, I bet you'd like other of my videos. Go check out the backlog. These videos are made thanks to my Patreon members because they help support me financially. These videos are mostly made with my own money, so I just like to thank my Patreon members real quick because it really genuinely helps out. So thank you to Leroy, Fetter, Caracol, Old School FRP, Burning Heart Custom Creations, James, Anders, Hanover, Grim Drunk, Tiborius, Andy, Corey, Mike, Nick, Malicious Laboratory, Cabu, The Pessimist, Seb, Lori, and our newest patrons, Nano and Raph. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate it. They get early access to any of the STLs that I create for this board. As soon as this board is done, the STLs that I've been developing for it will be live, and you guys can download those for free. I could make you guys pay for these, and to be honest, I probably should, but I genuinely like giving these out to you guys. If you end up liking the STL packs, there's several of them at this point. You can find those in the collection section of the Patreon so that you can easily find these. I should probably get back to describing the video though. So the paint job on this is really simple. I'm just painting in shades of gray, trying to make it look like a stone statue. Anything that's really high and elevated is getting more of an overbrush, and I'm using a really rough shower sponge that I got from the dollar store and I tore up, and it has a really uneven texture, and so I'm really letting that texture kind of randomize this thing, and because it's all speckled, it really does look like stone in person, and hopefully that's coming off on camera. But that's it. I hope you guys like it. Thank you guys so much for watching. This build has been really fun, and really intimidating, and I've really grown a lot throughout this process. And hopefully this encourages you guys to get out there and build. If you do build, tag me on Instagram, join the Discord server. It's free. I don't put anything behind paywalls, so just come in, show me what you're doing. That's the best part of this whole situation, is meeting every single one of you. I respond to every comment, so if you have any other questions, do that. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let you go. So thank you so much again. Have a good one.